Hey, David, I know you got a Bank of David going on. You're a big-time lender. I'm trying to buy a $500,000 house. I've saved up really well. I got the $100,000 down. I need a $400,000 loan from the Bank of David. What can you do for me?
How about this? I'll let you borrow $400,000 at 7.125%, and in 30 years, you can pay me back $970,154.
I'm borrowing $400,000. That's it, David. You want me to pay you back almost $1 million?
Yeah, that's exactly right. But you know what? That's what you've been doing on every single house that you were buying anyways. You didn't know that?
I guess not.
Well, you're talking to the Bank of David, and unfortunately, every other bank is going to be the same thing. If that shocks you, well, you're in for more surprises in today's episode of Mortgage Monday, where Christian and I get into how much you're actually paying the bank back when you borrow money, and more importantly, what you can do to pay them back less so you build your wealth faster and have more money to buy more real estate. That and more in today's episode of Mortgage Mondays. Christian Bachelor, let's talk amortization periods, 15-year loans, 30-year loans, and everything in between. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Good episode just for everybody to kind of remember the fundamentals of mortgages and how to decide what product's best for you. But before we get into that, remember when you had to pay to get a lead's phone number? It was like the dark ages until DealMachine made skip tracing a thing of the past. Now, with your DealMachine plan, you get unlimited access to phone numbers and contact information for no extra cost. That's right. Get high quality, reliable information trusted by leading financial institutions, all fully compliant with the federal Do Not Call list. Explore over 150 data points, including age, gender, marital status, occupation, and so much more. Trust me, this is the data you need for your off-market deals. With new filters, people flags, and color-coded phone numbers, lead management just got a whole lot easier. Ready to step up your investment game? Sign up for a DealMachine plan today and gain immediate access to this unlimited treasure trove of contact information and phone numbers. Just head over to DealMachine.com/BP. Transform your lead generation and deal-making strategies with DealMachine. Sign up today and start exploring the unlimited possibilities at DealMachine.com/BP, like BiggerPockets. Now, back to Mortgage Mondays.
All right. So if you have heard of a 15-year loan, a 30-year loan, what are they? What's the difference?
Obviously, the year that you're paying the loan is the difference. So your payment terms of the loan, 15-year is a payment period scheduled over 15 years. 30 years is 30 years, right? And there are differences with interest rates, monthly payments, all that, even though you're taking out the same loan amount. And that's obviously stemming from the fact that you're paying it over either a shorter or a long period of time.
Okay, good. So people have options where they could pay a loan off over a longer period of time, like 30 years, or a shorter period of time, like 15 years. There's even 10 years options. There's 20-year options. I believe that there's pretty much every option. What would prohibit somebody from choosing like a 17-year option?
Yeah, good question. And there are very, very flexible loan options in conventional loans. I mean, we've done like a 12-year loan, right? A 15-year, a 17-year, just like you said, David. What would prevent people from choosing those options is that obviously when you're shortening your payment period, it means you have to pay more per month. Even though typically on shorter term loans, you get a lower interest rate, your gross payment actually increases because you're paying your loan off in such a shorter period of time. And we'll have a couple examples that we go through comparing, for example, 30-year, 20-year, and 15 years to show you guys what payment and interest rates would differ.
So in other words, if you wanted a 12-year loan, you could get one and you could get a better rate. But if your DTI didn't support that, it wouldn't be an option.
That's exactly right.
So a little later in the show, we're going to talk about the difference in total interest paid versus a 30, 20, and 15-year loan. Just know that the longer you extend the loan out for, the more total interest you're going to pay. So there's an element of delayed gratification versus immediate gratification. If you want that lowest payment possible to ramp up your cash flow, it comes with a price. You're going to pay much more over the total period of the loan, and you're going to have a higher interest rate. So let's start with the 30-year loan, Christian. At today's rates on a primary residence, what is a good number people can expect to pay on a 30-year fixed rate?
Hi guys, so right now, obviously recording this in March 2024, just plugged in a sample 7 1/8, which is 7.125% interest rate on a 30-year loan. So this is a 30-year payment period. Your total monthly payment would be $26.94. That's pre-taxes and insurance. That's just your loan payment. And what that would lead to, if you just paid the minimum for the full 30 years, you never refied, you never sold, you held that loan to maturity, you would have paid out a total interest of $570,154 on your $500,000 purchase. So you actually end up paying more in interest than you did to buy the house. And that's the cost of financing over a long period of time.
It's a crazy thought. People balk at the thought of paying $500,000 for a house. They think that's too expensive, but then they end up paying $570,000 in interest over that 30-year period of time. And that's at a 7.125% rate. Now, for the exact same loan, but over a shorter period of time, so now you're going to pay it back over 20 years, what interest rate can somebody get today?
You'd be a little lower, so we'd price it out at a 6.875. This would be on a 20-year loan, like you said, David. And guys, just listen to this shocking difference in interest. Just shaving off those last 10 years, instead of that $570,000 in interest you'd pay over the life of the loan, in the 20-year option, you would pay $337,101 in interest over 20 years. So shaving almost $250,000 off your interest paid. That's half of the house price.
All right. So in order to save $250,000 over the life of the loan, here's something that's even more shocking. The difference in your monthly payment is not as drastic as you think. The 30-year loan at 7.125% was priced out at just under $2,700. The 20-year loan at 6.875 is priced out at under $3,100. It's only $3,070. So we're talking about $370 a month more to save a massive amount of money over the life of the loan.
That's almost at what, 1,001 savings, $370 a month to save $337,000 over the life of the loan, right? That's pretty good, right? So absolutely, when you guys are pricing out these mortgages, make sure you're not just putting yourself in the box of always 30-year loans, right? That is the standard in America. Probably 90% plus of all of our loans are 30-year fixed rate loans, but there are other options, guys.
And one thing to think about, why people go for the longest loan possible is maybe they didn't know about it. They don't listen to Mortgage Mondays. They didn't know it was an option to get a different amortization period. But a lot of them are also trying to maximize cash flow. And why are we trying to maximize cash flow? Because we're trying to get out of our job as fast as we can. And sometimes it looks like you rushed out like the hare in the story of the tortoise and the hare, and you got as much cash flow as you could so you could try to quit your job, but then the tortoise beat you because you ended up paying so much more interest over the life of that loan. Now, the last option we're going to look into is a 15-year loan. If somebody wants a 15-year loan under the same conditions, what can they expect for an interest rate compared to the 30-year?
Yeah, this is where you see some pretty big drops here. 15-year loan, the going rate today would be 6.375, which is just about a 1% savings over the 30-year equivalent, where we started at 7.125. Your monthly payment here would be $34.57. So if we're comparing it at our starting point of $2,700 a month, it's about a $750 increase on your monthly payment. So that's pretty substantial. Not everybody would be able to accomplish that, right? But in the event you could, and you held this loan for 15 years, your total interest paid would be $222,260. So that is significantly more than half of the interest shaved off from where we started at $570,000 on the 30-year equivalent. Really, really good savings now that we're seeing, where you're shaving off 60% of what that interest is that you pay over the course of the loan.
That's about right. If you go for the 15-year option with the lower interest rate, you're basically combining the lower rate with the shorter period of time that you pay it back. You end up paying right around 40% as much interest as if you went for the 30-year loan that had the higher rate. Now let's sum some of this up. 30-year loan, 7.125 was the rate, about $2,700 was the payment, and your total interest was $570,000 on a $500,000 house that you put 20% down. Okay, so you borrowed $400,000 to pay back $570,000. That means you borrowed $400,000 and your ultimate number you had to pay back to the bank was $970,154. So to borrow $400,000, you're paying back about $1 million over 30 years to get a 7.125% rate. The 20-year loan, your rate drops from 7.125 to 6.875. Nice little drop there. Your monthly payment only goes up about $370, so you're about $3,070, and the total interest paid was $337,000. And then if you go to the 15-year loan, your interest rate would drop from 7.125 on a 30 to 6.375 on a 15, and your monthly payment would be just under $3,500, about $3,457. So about $3,450. And the total interest of $222,000. So as you can see, if you can stomach a higher monthly payment, you get rewarded with a better interest rate. You also get rewarded with considerably less interest that's paid over the life of the loan. Now, let's talk about why that happens. It's because of a process that we call amortization. So amortization is a fancy word that we use to describe when you pay back principal and interest in the same payment. An interest-only loan would be a loan where you pay back a set amount of interest per year for what you borrowed. So in this case, if you bought a $500,000 house, put 20% down, you're borrowing $400,000. If your interest rate is 7%, you're going to pay back 7% of $400,000 every single year for as long as you have that money borrowed. The balance that you owe never actually goes down. If it is an amortized loan, a portion of that payment, it goes towards the principal and a portion goes towards the interest, but more of it goes towards the interest than the principal. Now, when the loan period is longer, a bigger percentage of every payment goes to the interest, which means you lose it. And a smaller percentage goes towards the principal, which means you get it back. You don't owe it. When the loan periods are shorter, a higher chunk of that payment goes towards the principal and a smaller chunk goes towards the interest. That's why you save so much when you get a shorter period loan, because of the payment you're making every single month, a bigger chunk of it is going back to you in the form of principal pay down. And we're talking about this because most investors are only taught to analyze for cash flow, which means the only number they want to know is what's my monthly payment. I just want to get that as low as I can because the lower my payment is, the more of the money that I get to keep from my rent. But you don't think about the hidden costs and that you're throwing money away in interest every single month. There could be some scenarios where if you're in a financially strong position, you choose that 15-year loan or maybe the 20-year loan and you don't cash flow, or you don't cash flow as strong in the beginning, but over time you start to pay off really big chunks of your principal. And at the end of the day, you make way more money than the investor that got the cash flow because they had the lower payment, but that meant they paid more interest. So Christian, what are some ways that people can hack into this amortization understanding to build wealth faster through equity buildup and loan paydown?
In lending, you kind of see behind the scenes a little bit, right? Doing what I do. And I've seen people use a whole bunch of strategies to hack, so to speak, their amortization. You know, David, you talk about house hacking all the time. I'm thinking about how to hack the financing, right? We're on Mortgage Mondays, so I think we wouldn't be doing our service if we don't bring this up. We talked about the 30, 15, 20 years. Those are great options, right? But all of those assume you're just making your minimum payment. So on your 30-year loan, you're actually paying off over 30 years, paying the minimum required. 20-year, same thing. 15-year, same thing. How you can get into these other options is if you paid more than the minimum. I have an example scenario that we played out. If you took a 30-year loan, remember where a 30-year loan started, $570,000 in interest you're paying, 7.125% interest rate, paying it off over 30 years. Those were our starting point. I did a calculation where if we just agreed to pay what your 15-year loan was. So let me make sure everybody's clear. We're taking a 30-year loan, but we're making the payment of a 15-year loan. I ran the numbers and you would actually pay that loan off on year 16. So it's a little bit less as competitive, right? And comparing the interest that you pay on the 15-year option, which was $222,000, you would pay a little more. You would pay $270,000. However, the reason why this is something to bring up. In the event, like what David brought up, 15-year loans are hard to cash flow with. They're hard to front that expense. It's a larger monthly payment. If you take a 30-year loan and agree, just hold yourself accountable to paying your 15-year loan rate, you will still pay it down in a similar time frame. On top of that, you have the flexibility. So if you have a rental property and you had to kick out a tenant, or if you have some vacancy, or if there's repairs needed or maintenance needed, and you're not collecting rent for 2, 3, 4, 5 months, you have the flexibility to return back to your 30-year mortgage payment, which is lower by a few $100, and it wouldn't hit you as hard as if you were required and mandated to pay that 15-year mortgage. So I call this kind of, hey, you can have a 15-year loan, even if you're on a 30-year amortization. You just have to pay the 15-year loan agreement. But having a 30-year still allows you the flexibility to go back and pay your minimum requirement as if you were paying it off for over 30 years. That's number one. That's hack one. Hack number two, and this is a little bit more commonly spoken about, bi-weekly payments, an extra payment every year, adding on $100 to your principal, any combination of these. I'll start with bi-weekly payments. Typically, if you pay once a month, which is where mortgages are typically required, times that by 12, you get 12 payments in a year. What a lot of people do is they break down their monthly payment, typically on the same schedule that they receive their paychecks, which most people are bi-weekly. If you pay half of your mortgage every 2 weeks, there's 52 weeks in the year, divided by 2 is 26. So you actually end up making 26 payments of half the amount, which is equivalent to 13 mortgage payments, right? So you pay 13 mortgages instead of 12 is what I'm getting at. And you get that extra pay down of one mortgage payment every year. And that typically will lead to you shaving off 5 to 7 years from your mortgage. So that's the same scenario where you have a 30-year loan, but you're making it a 25 to 23-year loan. Pretty cool. And you can run the numbers of how much interest that saves and all the same calculations that we're doing. But there are absolutely ways to get into your amortization and hack it to be more beneficial to your investing strategy.
Now, if you're wondering, David, I listen to you on the podcast every week. Why have you never talked about this before? Well, I get it. However, rates were in the threes. Why did we need to pay down our loans faster when interest rates are that low? It doesn't really make sense to put all the money towards paying down your loan when you could buy more real estate. So we used to be in an environment where rates were super low and prices and rents were going up super fast. So I was telling everybody, you got to buy. I'm not saying don't buy, but I'm saying you don't have to buy with as much urgency as you did at one point. You now know more than the average bear when it comes to loan paydown, amortization, and the fancy tools that you have at your disposal to make money. So you're welcome, everybody. Let us know in the comments, was this something that you were aware of? And is there something that you think we're missing? Do you have a strategy that you use to pay your loans down faster, build your equity quicker, and buy more real estate while balancing risk? We want to know. Christian, anything you want to add before we get out of here?
No, I love it. What a summary, as in typical David Green fashion, summing everything up, easy to understand. I love it.
As always, BiggerPockets has tons of resources to help you build your wealth through real estate, and we would love for you to take advantage of them. Check out the BiggerPockets.com website. This is David Green for Christian Batchelder on Mortgage Monday. We'll see you next week.